What's going on, everybody? Good morning, good evening, wherever you are and whatever time it is. Welcome back to another video with you, man, Measureaholic. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are looking at the top 5 best archery units in the Divided Impera Overhaul mod for Total War Rome 2. So before we jump into these units though, I do want to state this is looking at these units based purely off their archery statistics. This is not looking at any of their melee, defense, attack, or any of those attributes. And it is also not looking at how readily available or how rare these units are in the game themselves. Some of these units are extremely hard to get, some of them not so much, but I didn't take that into account. I wanted to focus solely on the archery side of things because it's purely just about which of these units is best as an archer. Some of them have special abilities, some of them have their own downfalls and unique attributes, but we're not looking at that. This is purely just to figure out which is the best archery unit in Divided Impera. Let's get started with number 5. And number 5 belongs to the heavy Atropatanian archers from Atropakan. That's right, Atropakan is a bit of an underlying faction in the Grand Campaign, but they are definitely not an underlier in this list. We're going to see a couple submissions from them. I'm going to go off their statistics here and I'll read them in the same order each time, but I'll still let you know what statistic I'm reading. So first off, we start with the range. The range is 185, which is excellent. Base damage is 15, combined with their armor piercing, which is 3, giving their arrows a total of 18 damage, which is very good. Ammunition of 15, which is pretty standard for almost all archer units. An armor of 15 and a shots per minute of 8. The reason they're number 5 and not higher though is their armor lets them down pretty heavily and they can get overwhelmed against multiple very cheap slingers. So yeah, that's why they're only number 5. Now on to number 4. Here we have the elite Persian archers from Parthia. I actually thought these units would be very high on this list, or way higher I should say. But unfortunately the Persians ended up getting outclassed, and we'll see by who very soon. They share a lot of the same statistics as the last unit, the heavy Atropatanian archers. They have a range of 185, base damage of 15 for their arrow, combining with 3 armor piercing damage for their arrow, ammunition of 15, an armor of 20, and a shots per minute of 8. So basically they have 5 extra armor compared to the heavy Atropatanian archers, and that's why they're bumped up to number 4 instead of being lower in the list. They also will eventually succumb to multiple slingers targeting them, so do be careful with that, but otherwise they're a very good unit. Now, number 3, ladies and gentlemen, we're getting into some unique and very unexpected territory. We're looking at the Royal Scythians. They are providing us with the Scythian armored archers with range of 185, very good, base damage of 15, armor penetration for their arrow at 3, so a total of 18 damage for their arrow. Their ammunition is at 15, however their armor is at 25. That's very good for an archer unit. And they have a shots per minute though of just 7, which is a little bit lower than the last 2 units, but I consider their armor being increased to be worth the sacrifice in shots per minute in my opinion. It's pretty rare that they're going to be going up against elite archers anyway, but I prefer heavily armored archers so that they last longer against other skirmishers, as that is their primary threat beyond cavalry. Anyway, on to number 2. Number 2, we're getting in some very strange territory indeed. We're looking at the Getae. They are providing us with the Sarmato-Dacian elite archers. These archers very nearly took number 1, but only just by a smidgen that they didn't. They have a range of 185, same as all of the other archers here. Base damage of 15, armor penetration at 3, so that's a total of 18 for their arrows. Their ammunition is at 15, however their armor is a whopping 35. Their shots per minute though is still just at 7, so it could be higher, but their armor being at 35, these guys are as heavily armored as the late tier Principe units for Rome. So these guys are very incredible. They will stand up against archer fire and slinger fire for quite a decent amount of time. They'll probably kill the other skirmishers that they're fighting against before the others can kill them. So very impressive, very close to taking number 1. However, number one belongs back to Atropakan. They are providing us with the Royal Archers with a range of 185, same as the others. However, they have a base damage of 15, armor penetration of 3, so that's a total of 18 damage for their arrows. Pretty standard for all of these units, but it will change when we get to our honorable mention section. Their ammunition is at 15, however their armor is at 35 and their shots per minute is at 8. So they're almost the same as the elite Getae archers, but their shots per minute is just slightly higher, putting their statistics just above all of the rest. Like I said, we do have an honorable mention section coming up though, so I'll definitely show you guys that. But wow, it was a very tight, close call. I was expecting the elite Persian archers to take the number 1 slot for best archer unit in the game, but statistically speaking, these guys got everything that you need. It would be nice if they maybe had a little bit more damage, but 18 seems to be the maximum damage for any archer unit besides the Syracusan special unit crossbows and their dart throwers, which I'm not including in this list. They're a separate unit in my opinion, so I'm not taking those into account. Keep that in mind. I'll do a separate video on those in the future and other types of units, which you can always feel free to drop down your suggestions down below if you would like. But ladies and gentlemen, that's your number 1 best archer unit in the game. It belongs to Atropakan. The Royal Archers, they are very heavily armored, very professional. You can just see them right here in action. They are fantastic. They shoot quite fast at 8 shots per minute, and they're just really the best unit in the game regarding archery. However, we get to our honorable mention section here, and first off we're looking at the Indian Longbowmen for the Mauryan faction. They have a range of 215. That is the highest range for any archer unit in the game. However, their damage comes down to a base damage of 13. Their armor penetration is only at 3, giving them a 16 total damage for their arrows, which is only 2 lower than the rest of the top 5. However, it gets worse. Their ammo is at 15, but their armor is at 1. So they're going to die insanely fast to other skirmishes, to anything. A butterfly will kill them very quickly, which is a shame, and that's why they're just out of the top 5 list in my opinion. Now we're moving on to Cretan archers. Now I know some of you will be thinking, what the hell, why weren't they in the top 5? They're the most talked about, the most useful units in the grand campaign. And that may be so, because they are readily available as a mercenary unit and as an auxiliary to certain factions, such as the Ptolemy faction for Egypt. However, their range is only 150. They have a base damage of 14 and an armor penetration damage of 4. So they have the most armor penetration for their arrows of any other archer unit, which is very impressive, and which is why I believe that they get so many kills when they do get into fighting. Their ammo is at 15. Their armor is usually at 15 if you're playing as Egypt, but they can be as high as 20 if you're hiring them as a mercenary from other factions. The shots per minute is at 10, which is very impressive, and honestly they very could well have jumped into the top 5 list, but that range is just so friggin' low, it's almost not worth it in my opinion. These are very short range sniping style units. They're going to kill the enemy general in a rush, but they're not going to go well against other skirmishes in my opinion, and that's what I try to focus on. This is archer on archer warfare we're trying to focus on here. But then we get to our last honorable mention, which is the Ethiopian noble archers from the Madawi faction. Range of 185, a base damage of 15, armor penetration of 3, giving a total of 18 for their arrows. Their ammunition is at 15, however their armor is the second lowest out of all of these factions, and all these units I should say, at just 10. The shots per minute is at 8 though, but their armor just really let them down here. They're a good archer unit, especially if you're playing as a Madawi faction, or however it's just not good enough to be in the top 5. I was trying to be very strict on this. I focus on armor a lot with my archers, since generally you're using archers to either do damage to the enemy melee units or you're trying to kill the enemy skirmishers, right? And if your archer unit can't last long against other skirmishers trying to nail it, then you're gonna have a big problem. It's already hard enough to protect them from cavalry, but if your heavy elite tier expensive archer unit is getting killed by some very cheap levy plebar slinger, then you got a problem. And that's why I tried to prioritize armor so much. Anyway, this is my top 5 best archer units in the game. Yours may differ slightly, but again, this is just taking into account the archery statistics of all of these units. But ladies and gentlemen, let me know your thoughts down below. Were you surprised about the nation that took the #1 spot? I certainly was. But anyway, I'll be doing more top 5 videos in the future. Feel free to leave suggestions. But until then, thank you all for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I shall see you in the next one.